My name is Rupelin, and in celebration of International Women's Day and the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women, today CPSA is hosting an important panel webinar, Reshaping Sales, Closing the Gap, and Empowering Women. Although women make up more than half of the global workforce, they represent fewer than 1/3 of all B2B sales and 1/4 of B2B sales tech roles. When it comes to the coveted top sales jobs, women only hold 12% of those positions. While gender diversity in B2B sales is severely lacking, company profits are close to 50% higher when women are well represented at executive levels. And when women lead sales teams, they deliver high win and quota attainment rates than their male counterparts. Today, we are going to discuss how you can help close the gender gap in sales and hear from 3 women with diverse backgrounds and expertise who will share their stories, successes, and challenges with navigating and developing the profession despite the systemic biases challenging women's equitable participation in workplaces around the world. Now, I'm just going to go over the quick housekeeping rules for today. So please note that all of today's attendees have been placed on mute for the duration of the workshop, but that you can ask questions or comments using the questions function in your GoToWebinar dashboard. They're just going to be addressed at the very end in our Q&A session. This webinar will be recorded and you'll receive the recording link once the webinar has finished. So before we get into our discussion, I have the great honor of introducing today's esteemed panel. We have Agnes Land, who is the VP of Business Development at Change Connect. We have Raveen Badi, who is the Director of Learning and Development at National Tire Distributors. And then we have Lisa Leach, our President and Sales Strategist at Teneo Results. You each have such diverse backgrounds in the sales profession as well as in building sales professionals and sales teams. Maybe we can just go through your current roles and the different capacities that each of you have in reshaping sales and closing the gender gap. So, Lisa, maybe we'll start with you.
Good morning, Rupelin. A great pleasure to be here representing women and working with you in the CPSA. So I started in sales almost 30 years ago, and I will admit, I thought this whole concern about women and glass ceiling was gone. It is a bit surprising, and I'll even admit a bit disappointing that we're still having this conversation today. But I'm very, very excited that to be invited to be a part of this and the opportunity to train, coach, and lead so many sales professionals, many women, in order to become stronger, better, and more confident to get into those higher roles.
Thank you, Lisa. Agnes, can we have you go next?
Sure, I'm the head of sales at Change Connect here. We're a sales consultancy that do anything and nothing that have to do with sales, whether that's sales training, sales compensation realignment, sales reorg, CRM implementation, pretty much anything that have to do with sales we do. I didn't start off being a salesperson. I have an engineering undergrad, actually. I was supposed to take over my dad's general contracting business. I went into civil engineering. My brother went into architecture, and we're supposed to take over the family business. At least that was the planned path from an Asian parent. Neither me or my brother works for my dad at the moment. He is working well into his 70s. So anyways, but here we are landing in a sales career after my engineering career. So we can talk a little bit about that too, because I think a lot of people don't, as we were going to school, when someone asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? People don't say, yeah, I want to be a salesperson. There's no course that talked about, at least back in the day, and I'm dating myself, but there's no sales course, right? There isn't how to be a better salesperson. There isn't such a course. So hence it isn't a career of choice for a lot of people as they were picking their majors. So I think that might be something that can be revolutionized and see how we can get more people sort of welcoming the world of sales. I go to engineering 4th year students, and I would present at their capstone project presentation this is probably my 10th year doing it, where I'm preaching the world of sales. And then you know how little these people actually know about sales, and trying to get them to change their mind into getting into a sales career as well. So it is just a matter of exposure, I think, for just getting, I think, our industry a bit more, I would say, unfamiliar, getting those unfamiliar with our industry and giving them the warm and fuzzies.
Thank you so much for that, Agnes. And I didn't know about you and your brother not taking on your dad's company. That is such an interesting fact to share. Thank you so much. Raveen, can we have your introduction, please?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here discussing such an important topic. I work for National Tire Distributors, and I'm focused on growing and developing our internal talent, and getting them to succeed and help them, with the right tools and process. So my role focuses on talent and leadership development, performance management, change management from a training perspective, and supporting our organization through our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to be more of an inclusive workplace. And then sales specific, because we're here to talk about sales, I focus with the sales teams in terms of being an in-house trainer and partnering with CPSA on the consultative methodology and coaching them, and further developing and investing in them so that they are successful with our customers, really supporting the successes of our customers and differentiating ourselves from our competition by our skilled organization. And we actually have a requirement that everyone in our sales organization becomes CPSA certified through CPSA, through designation for that level of standard going out into the market. So I'm really excited to have a wonderful conversation and talking about some strategies to increase that really low number that we've, the 3% in a decade, where we can increase that number to a much higher representation.
Thank you so much, Raveen. I think your role is especially impressive and really, really cool because 10, 15 years ago, a role like yours, and even your role as the chair of diversity and inclusion, might not even exist. So it's so great to have you on this panel, and I'm so glad that you're going to be giving everyone your perspective today. So I think we'll carry on and move forward to our discussion. Our first point of discussion today is that the International Women's Day 2022 theme is Break the Bias, as Sandro had just mentioned. What does this phrase really mean to you? Lisa, we'll start with you.
So I had to do a little bit of research to actually really understand what this meant. And it really is the symbolism. And I find it quite intriguing that, they really want to be able to break down the barriers. And I think what we need to do is to take this and move it to this, right? So that we can welcome all women, all genders, all diversity into sales and moving up through career paths in organizations to create stronger culture. So I think only when we all come together will we be able to accomplish this.
Raveen, do you have anything you want to point out or say about Break the Bias?
Yeah, sure. To me, when I think about bias, it's something very natural and human. We all have it. It's unconscious filters that we place in how we think, act, and do in our daily lives. So when we're talking about breaking the bias, to me, that means like we're taking an inward look and seeing what biases do we show up day to day, and then what can we actively do to change that so that we're being inclusive of one another, we're removing the stereotypes and judgments, and that we're really supporting people that are a part of equity-seeking groups. So we're breaking that, but we have to look internally first and see how we show up so that we can actively make a change together to support others.
Thank you so much. And to your point, they are unconscious filters and biases that we all very subconsciously kind of have. And the point of today is to really understand what we can do to learn and educate ourselves. So Agnes, can we get your perspective as well? What does break the bias mean to you?
Sure, and I think this year's topic, I think is a timely one given what's going on in the world too. So for me, actually, when I was thinking about this particular topic, one thing that came to my mind is an advice that early days I got in sales, from reading a book called Start With No by Jim Camp. And one of the essential focus of the book is about how you have to, the only way you can be a better salesperson, but in this case, a better person, is to start off with a blank slate, right? Understanding and not go into any situation with any biases, with any stereotype is the only way for you to be a good salesperson, right? But also, I think just to be a good citizen altogether.
Yes, could not agree more. Thank you so much, the three of you, for all of your fantastic feedback. I'm just going to go ahead and read some very, very important information that was gathered from Forrester's 2021 study on cracking the sales gender diversity code. So you'll see on the screen here, women represent 39% of the workforce in sales specifically. This percentage has only increased by 3% over the past decade. Not surprisingly, the percentage decreases as seniority increases, with the lowest percentage of women represented in VP and the C-suite. Only 21% of vice presidents in sales are females. Sales roles haven't always been viewed as positions in which women could excel, and fewer women proactively seek them out as a result. What barriers are keeping women from advancing into sales leadership roles? Agnes, do you want to start this one?
Sure, I'm gonna. Now let's start off with I didn't go seeking for a sales career, right? I landed in sales because I'm an entrepreneur. So now I understand the job role. I think first of all, there's an understanding of the job role, which I think there's a lot of misconception out there. And now I love it. And one of the reasons why I think there aren't more women in sales is because women actually, they don't realize that sales could be a great career. When you have kids, or if you're a female, like when you're kids and when you're a female, like I mentioned, like no one goes and say, hey, I want to be a salesperson. That just isn't quite the way it is. And actually, I have an app company that we are working on helping solve one of the issue, and we did a study during the pandemic. So 26% of women who actually become unemployed during the pandemic says they did because of lack of childcare. So as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, as a leader, a lot of times, you look to have that balanced lifestyle. And I think there is a perception in sales jobs and sales role that you might have to, work nights, or you have to do overnight travels or whatnot, right? Things are inconvenient to a family life, especially if you have kids, or if you don't have, even if you don't have kids, you just have a lot of responsibility as a woman. So when you think about the balance in there, a lot of misconception sort of bar women from taking on or even trying or bothering with a sales career, because it's not a 9 to 5 career. So I think the truth of the matter now, like I live and breathe sales for the last, I would say, a good 6 years. The truth of the matter is, I think it is quite like I'm a hockey mom, so like there's quite as long as you know how to balance your lifestyle, there's absolutely a way to balance life and work as a sales rep. I think you just need to understand the job role better and sort of remove some of those misconceptions.
Lisa, I see you nodding. What about you?
So I started in sales almost 30 years ago, which seems like a lifetime ago, and can't believe it's been that long. But the reason why I started in sales and then became successful in sales was a few of the female sales counterparts that were on that team. And what they shared with me was, Lisa, having a sales territory is like having your own little business. You get to truly be the entrepreneur. You get to choose in a lot of ways the clients, how you grow, what you travel, and it gave you a lot of an ownership and empowerment to be able to grow that territory. So I liked that flexibility and that empowerment, and it gave me the opportunity to be able to do all of that. I balanced and raised 2 daughters throughout all of that and became a VP of sales. And part of that was because other women supported me, but also my bosses were male and they encouraged me. They saw potential in me that I didn't even see in myself. So I think we really do need to be able to encourage this. I mean, at that point in time, 30 years ago, I mean, pretty much that stat was about the same. So it's disappointing that in 30 years, we haven't moved that needle. I think we need to become a stronger voice as women, helping other women to see the potential. And you do have the opportunity to be able to balance that with children and family and all those other kinds of things. So again, I think we as women need to have a stronger voice, share that, and really create awareness around how you can really be your own entrepreneur in your sales territory.
That is such an empowering kind of like perception to have of yourself, Lisa. I 100% really value that. Raveen, what about you? What barriers are keeping women from advancing into sales leadership roles that you're seeing?
So I think of two things when I think of barriers for women in leadership roles and in sales in general. First one being out of sight, out of mind, and it kind of connects to what Agnes was saying in her portion. If you know, me, myself, I was growing up in an East Indian household. None of the female in my family or those in my community were in sales roles. And for that matter, I didn't really see any examples of sales women on TV. So when it came time for me to think about what my career was, I wasn't exposed to women in this profession. So that wasn't even in my thought process when I'm thinking about careers when I was younger going into it. And so that's when Agnes is saying, if we don't see it, you know, it's not, sometimes people just fall into the sales profession in general because we're not promoting it or it's not being seen. So I think, you know, companies, this panel is great because it's showing people that are, women that are successful in sales in some degree. We're highlighting and making awareness to it, but organizations promoting and spotlighting women that are in sales positions. Let's get the word out there so that it becomes attainable, so that it is become familiar, and women do see that it's a realistic aspiration and that it is a career that you can do well in. And then the other piece is company culture. So we want to get women into sales roles, but then what is the experience for them once they're in those roles in the organization? Is it a positive experience? And we're looking for, when we're talking about breaking the bias, we're also looking for allies from the men in the roles and the bosses. Lisa talked about having great male bosses that encouraged her. So what are the male counterparts doing in the organization, top down, not just colleagues, but leaders, in fostering an inclusive workspace? Are administrative tasks, as an example, spread fairly? Are women's opinions seeked and valued, or are they overlooked? So how is that culture supporting and then therefore reinforcing women coming into those roles? So those are the two things that I see as barriers.
So Raveen, you just triggered a memory for me as a kid growing up. One of my favorite shows was Who's the Boss? So I might be dating myself, but I love that show because, right, Judith Light was, you know, the executive, and I always went, wow, that would be cool to have that, right, and be that. There's very few shows like that that even showed us that that was possible, and certainly it was groundbreaking at that point in time.
100%. And thanks for reminding me. I forgot about Who's the Boss, but it's very few and far between when you see those examples. Yeah.
I agree just on that. Like, we see all of
going, what show is Who's the Boss?
I'm not that young, Lisa. But to your point, we see so many films out there and series like Mad Men and, you know, Wolf of Wall Street, and we think about these aggressive, tough men, you know, who are succeeding in sales at the top of the profession. But we don't see the other side. We don't see the women. So to your point, Raveen, yes, it is 100% a barrier, and it's really important to get visibility out there. I have to say, this is actually our first ever International Women's Day webinar here at the CPSA, and I am so glad to be facilitating this and to be, you know, shedding light and spotlighting this issue, and three very successful, fantastic women. So that's great. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Just to play on that, Rupelin, you're right. Yeah. Like, you know, the Wolf of Wall Street, sales is still depicted as a aggressive climb to the top, do whatever you can. And it's not that at all. Like, it's professional, it's consultative, it's, you know, salespeople helping other people, and it's not viewed that way. And again, I was very, very fortunate to have many sales colleagues who said, it's all about helping others, helping businesses solve problems with solutions. And I think if we describe it better that way, we'll reduce that stigma in sales and start to invite a whole lot of other people, like Agnes talked about, as engineers who don't even realize that that's a possible career.
Another thing that I'll just kind of point out on all of this is the way we describe things, to your point, Lisa. So I hear it time and time again, people calling the sales area of an organization the bullpen or the sales pit, things like that. It's kind of changing the way we describe things in the nomenclature of things related to sales. It doesn't always have to be this crazy, competitive, aggressive area. There are opportunities for other personalities, like you had mentioned, and other character traits, I think, that are male, female, or otherwise. So 100%, could not agree more. Does anybody else have anything to add? I don't want to end it here if we don't have to.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just going to elaborate on Agnes' point about being an engineer. We get the opportunity to work with lots of engineers in our sales teams because, they also want to be interacting with customers, right? And so they can provide solutions. So then they realize that they're in sales and they enjoy working with customers and solving problems and, you know, coming with solutions. And what's great about engineers is they're very, very process oriented. So then it really brings a rigor. You just can't show up and hope to win in sales. There is a sales process to be able to follow. And when you follow that, you can be successful. And that's why I think we have so many engineers who are more successful in sales, being able to do that.
That's a really good point. And I think probably the same thing goes for tech and sales, like different industries like that. Yeah.
Well, the other thing too here for the stats piece, I think one thing, like when we go to org chart designs, right? When you look at it, the sales org is all encompassing of a lot of roles, right? A leader can be the head of sales ops, for example, and still be under the sales organization too. So I think it is a matter of realizing, the ladies realizing that sales is not just, you know, that who is it that sell me this pen? What movie? Oh, like it isn't just that, you know, hard sales hunter type, right? There's like across the board, there's so many job descriptions within the world of sales that will really fit into the personality and the traits and the skill sets of a female much better than a male, if you ask me. So if you look at it and you break it down into not like different areas, there's definitely a role in the world of sales for females.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed, Agnes. I think it's even interesting that we are, I guess, categorizing these different characteristics, male, female. You know what I mean? You're if you have softer sentiments, like you're a woman type, you're more feminine. It's so interesting that we even have those. But to your point, I think that in the industry, and in popular culture, we've said that sales can be sharky. You know, what's a Shark Tank type thing? But it doesn't always have to be like that. And as you mentioned, there's obviously room for women in sales. We can see, sales teams that are driven by women as more successful. And there's definitely that element that needs to be promoted a little bit more. So I'm glad we're having this conversation once again. So we'll move on to the next question here. So 77% of B2B sales, female sales professionals told us that they met or exceeded their sales targets in the past financial year, compared to 63% of male sales professionals. Good segue to the last one. And it's not just individual sellers. When comparing win rates and quota attainment, female-led sales teams outperform those led by males by 3%. These stats speak for themselves and prove that women can belong and be successful in sales. Have you ever worked for a female sales leader or had a female mentor in your career? What did you learn from them and how do you incorporate your learnings today? Lisa, do you want to start it?
I didn't work directly for a female sales leader, but I certainly had lots of great mentors. And they encouraged me to be strong, to be fair, and to be prepared. And I think that's the key thing is, and women quite often will be more prepared. And I think that's one of the reasons why they are more successful, because you just can't wing it in sales. You truly need to be, and our mantra is be strategic, be proactive, and be brave. And so the more prepared, the more strategic, the more research you've done about your customer or your prospect, the more success you're going to be able to have. And when you deploy the consultative selling methodology, it's about asking questions and getting customers, no matter who they are or what gender they are, to talk more about this and then to be able to connect those dots. And I think women have the ability to be able to be more prepared, be more strategic, and be able to connect the dots. And so that's one of the reasons why there is a higher level of success. And I think we need to encourage that, whether they're female or male.
Yes, Raveen, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of working for and with strong female leaders throughout my career. And something that resonates, that's rung through with all of them, is being confident in yourself and in your abilities, even if others aren't. Right? So making sure you've got that confidence in you. You know what you're doing. So, have the confidence in moving forward with that. And making mistakes is okay. Failure is an opportunity to improve, right? It's not to get bogged down in the fact that you made a mistake, but it's what can you learn from it and then improve going forward. And take risks, try something different, try something new, right? Get out of your comfort zone. One leader said to me that stayed with me for all these years is, through discomfort, growth can occur. So take a chance.
I love that, Raveen. Agnes, do you want to add?
Sure. So I've been blessed with many mentors, whether male or female alike, and perhaps one thing that's worth mentioning here is that, mentor, I think you have to realize that they come in all shapes, size, and form. So surround yourself with good people. I think it's interesting one for me. And perhaps looking at some of my female leaders that I've learned from in the past, I think the best advice I have learned over the years is you got to play the hand you're dealt. It doesn't mean you fold when you don't have a good hand, right? It means you find a way to play it and win. And that's true for me, whether it's me, Agnes, the entrepreneur playing in a male dominant industry, or whether it's me, Agnes, the short Asian, getting a seat at the boardroom on the table, right? You have to realize you can't just throw up your hand and say, man, I'm dealt with a short hand and hands. Oh well, I'm just gonna give up, right? You gotta find a way to get in there and show the difference, make a difference, and then just show up. Like what Lisa says, right? A lot of times you look at other female or male, or they just have it, man. They're just so well put together, and it's gotta realize it's not like that at all. Or they're so lucky, right? They're always at the right place at the right time. And one of the things that I always tell our client is there's no such thing as right place at the right time. Maybe because I'm an engineer, you backward re-engineer the fact that you have to be at the right place at the right time, right? So there's some work, like what Lisa said, there's some preparation, there's some work involved to play that hand and win, right? That's all it is.
And you're right, Agnes. People have two roles to play. They can play the victim role, but what we need to do is to encourage them to rise above that line and play the victor role.
Absolutely, Lisa.
And also, just to add to that, it's focusing on what you have the power to influence or change, right? Focus on what you can do to move forward. So as Agnes said, if you've been dealt a bad hand, that's fine. That's what happens in life. But what you can control is how you react and how you move forward from that. So putting the attention and the priority on what you can do to try and achieve a positive outcome and make the best of the situation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your great insight. We'll move on to the next discussion point. 48% of women do not feel they consistently have the opportunity to be part of important business decisions. To be recognized and promoted, sales professionals need to be present when important strategies and tactics are discussed and decisions are made. Female sales professionals feel particularly concerned that they are being excluded from the places, both inside and outside of the office, where these decisions are being made. When asked if they consistently have the opportunity to be part of important business decisions, 48% of women answered no. In your respective careers, have you ever felt left out of business decisions, and what can teams and organizations do to mitigate imposing this feeling on others? Lisa, do you want to start us off?
Well, whether you're a woman or anyone, I think you really do need to build the case. So it kind of segues into what we were talking about and why, some women are more successful in being prepared, taking that risk. But you also need to be able to build the case and validate to be a part of those important decisions and be invited to the table. And if you're not invited to the table, how do you still demonstrate? How do you bring forth those stats, that information to help to influence that? So I grew up on a farm with a dad who was very, very proud to have 3 sons, even though I was the oldest. So at a very, very young age, I quickly learned that I could do anything my brothers could do. And so my dad didn't always involve me in a lot of things. But I kind of had to kick and scream a little bit and influence them until they got bigger and taller. But I still made sure that I always had a strong voice. So I learned to be able to play with the boys at a young age. And it's really, really helped me throughout my career. And we continue to work with many male teams. Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Lisa. Agnes, what about you?
Sure, I think absolutely. You know what? I've definitely been left out of business decision for different reasons. But I think if you feel that way, one of the things you might want to do is, number one, seek support and be an extrovert, right? Like Lisa to her dad. You want to be an extrovert when you need to be, right? And so sometimes I can tell you, and maybe because I tend to be an optimistic person, sometimes it could be just an oversight, right? So definitely go seek and don't build up those negative feelings, because it sometimes could be a misunderstanding. So also, I think on the organization side, as an organization, I think there gotta be extra emphasis put in terms of communication, transparency, and inclusivity. Because the idea of getting more diversity at the decision table isn't a touchy-feely concept, at least in my opinion. There is definitely a business case here for a balanced, inclusive workplace. Organization can benefit from different type of view, like different point of view, creativity, innovation, and all that drive top line revenue. So it isn't like I hate it when people say, okay, now they have I mean, like now they have a head of inclusivity, and that's a touchy-feely mojo type of rule. And then I'm like, no, it actually isn't, right? There is direct top line result that is built for culture that has such a strong cultural presence for not standing up for bullshit, right? In that world. So it's important for that people to realize this isn't a touchy-feely thing. It is a direct top line revenue thing.
Thank you, Agnes. Does anybody else have anything to add as well to this?
Yeah, I just, Agnes, you're speaking my language when we're talking about that balance between diversity and inclusion. Every organization needs to put a balanced focus. Just making it an inclusive workspace is good, but you also want to seek and value diversity, because to Agnes's point, it does create so much creativity, innovation, engagement. You don't know what you don't know. So if you don't have all the voices at the table, you are going to miss components. And so if all the voices are at the table, what you don't know, someone else at the table will be able to identify, so that all aspects are covered when you're thinking about a solution, when you're thinking about making a decision that's going to impact multiple stakeholders. And so one thing you can do as an organization level is, let's say you're looking to put together a team to make a big decision or to solve a problem. Well, who is that problem or decision going to impact? Think of your end user or the audience that it's going to impact, and then how do we represent all of those voices to come up with the best solution or idea? And then that way you're covering all your bases that way. If you're already midstream and you already have a team going, you can still do a fact check. Okay, who are we trying to support with this decision or with this solution? Are we missing any voices? So you can continuously check yourself on that as an organization, as a team, to see, do we have everyone represented? So that way we don't have people feeling left out.
Yeah.
I love that, Ravine. Who are we missing?
For the first time ever in the history of the workforce, there are 5 generations represented in the workforce. Agnes, you talked about your dad who's in his 70s and still, it sounds like actively a part of his business. And one of the things at our Evolve Sales Leaders event we did last year, we had 5 different generations on a panel, and each one of them talking about the future of sales. And there was as much learning and insights from the Gen Z as there was from the traditionalists who were over 70 years of age. So business has changed. And I think we need to take a look at different perspectives, technology, different ways of how do we go to market. And I think all generations, all genders can bring great insight and perspective.
Even to that point, Lisa, and something we've all talked about earlier on, so the different generations. We do have a workforce that is aging. We've got lots of generations, as you mentioned it, 5 generations. What are we doing to highlight sales in the young generation? What education are we putting in there? So there's more work now being done in terms of putting concrete programs in post-secondary education institutions. But when I was going to school 20 years ago, sales wasn't a program to go into. There's business administration, but now there's work and effort being put into making the young generation getting into the workforce, giving some actual education out there, and highlighting and spotlighting the sales profession as well. So that's also giving some more visibility into this profession. And we need to do more of that so that we can get the young generation well equipped to continue the sales profession as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
Agnes, did you want to add to that as well? Perfect. Thank you for this discussion. We'll move on to the next one here. So this one is on company culture, and Ravine, I know you touched on this in your first response, but female sales leaders listed company culture as the #1 challenge they faced in advancing in their career, and reported facing the issue of not being taken seriously by their fellow leaders at double the rate of their male counterparts. Why do you think that company culture is so important, and how are you fostering a positive environment for women at your current roles? Ravine, do you want to start off with this one?
Sure. Culture is so key to the employee experience at any organization, regardless if you're in sales or whether you're in operations or whether in human resources. Culture is key. If it's a positive environment, because you're working, how many hours are we working with our colleagues and at work and customers? It's a good chunk of our day. So we want to make sure that we're faced with positive environment with strong leaders and supportive and collaborative environment. Because at the end of the day, your employees are your biggest advocate for your brand, for your organization. So if they're having a great experience, then that's going to be spread, that's going to be communicated, and you're going to be able to attract top talent, in my opinion. And it starts from the top down, right? It's got to be, it's not just certain pockets of the organization. It has to be something that's fostered from the top leaders of your organization and throughout. And so for us at NTD, health, safety, wellness, and respect are core in our culture, and it is reinforced through our senior leadership team. And so developing our talent is crucial, right? We see a lot of promotions, a lot of folks in our sales teams. We've got a region president who's female. We now have a director of sales who's a female. We have a lot of individual contributors in sales that are females, but that's been a lot through internal growth and development of our associates. So they have a wide range of exposure to the business to better support them in their roles. So, and supporting our people leaders so that they can support their teams, right? And having a work-life, home-life balance, harmony. Those are key for us. And of course, putting extra effort into diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're starting off with recently creating a diversity, equity, and inclusion council. So those are just some of the things that at NTD we're trying to do to foster an inclusive and positive work experience for our associates.
Thanks, Raveen. You're doing such important work at NTD. It's so lovely to hear. Lisa, do you want to go next?
So in sales, we know top line sales numbers and those sales goals are really, really important to achieve. We've seen an increase awareness around bottom line gross profit margins. EBITDA is becoming even more and more important. But we feel that the most important piece is everything in the middle. It's the middle that matters the most. And I think this is what sales leaders need to look at. What motivates their teams? What gets them excited? We talked about that type of culture before, creating healthy, we use a lot of sports analogies because teams love to win. Individuals love to win, but what we're seeing is more and more teams want to work together to win and collectively achieve those sales goals. But it's everything that we do in the middle. So we've got top line, we've got bottom line, but what matters the most is in the middle and how we collaborative, how we come together to be able to work as a team in order to win that business. And I think that that's becoming really important. And it's important for sales leaders to find out really what is important. And we've had a lot of leaders say, you know, I really don't know what motivates my team. And with many sales teams working from home these days, it's more important than ever for them to feel a part of that winning, healthy organization that is there together and got each other's back. That's what a winning team is about and creates that great company culture.
Thanks, Lisa. Agnes, what about you?
I'm a big company culture gal. I think company culture have everything to do with whether someone feels comfortable speaking up if they see something wrong, right? Whether they know what to do if their boss isn't within reach. So, but more importantly, I think building a company culture takes work. I think a lot of times we think that, oh, if you gather a group of people, then company culture sort of builds itself, but it isn't. Like, it takes active work to build a company culture, one that you can play in, that one that you belong in, one that you feel comfortable in, right? Because if you don't do that, it becomes a dog's breakfast because everyone have their own idea of what their culture means. I mean, not maliciously, but everyone sort of have their own idea, right? Just mismatched idea. So, and I think it's worse nowadays because of the hybrid workplace, right? It used to be that we're in the same room or similar, within proximity of everyone, they can hear what's going on. You have water cooler conversation. So you build a culture that way. Now you just, it's worse for that. So definitely think about how to build a culture mindfully. But first and foremost, I think it's important as leaders of organization that we need to educate and open up the floor for gender biases altogether. Like, I feel sometimes we just don't talk about it, right? It's not a topic that people are open to having discussion about. So definitely creating space, right? But while we're at it, I think it's not just gender biases, right? I think it's all biases in general. To create that culture of openness, to stand up for biases. And don't forget this, the other thing I've noticed with, with the many companies that we work with too, also action speaks louder than words. It's not just what you put on plaques, right? It's also how your leaders are groomed to behave. So be the leader that your team not only wants you to be, but needs you to be to sort of lead the way for them and, look to you as that North Star.
Well said, Agnes. Does anybody else have anything to add? Okay, we'll move on to the next one here. So what are some important factors to look for to ensure that diversity, inclusion, and an effort to close the gender bias gap are being prioritized? What questions do you feel should be asked? Raveen, do you want to start?
Yes, for sure. Sorry, taking myself off mute there. Yeah, I'd love to. Some things, and there's so many things that one can look for, but just some things that come to mind are what representation of women exists within the organization and within senior roles at the organization, to show if that's a priority or not. Looking at what the images and their corporate site of an organization might depict. And keep in mind that some companies are in their starting journeys of putting effort into diversity, equity, inclusion, but it's something to at least inquire about then if you're not seeing representation in those public forums. What external organizations that focus on equity-seeking groups does the company support? Because that also can speak to what priorities are they placing, and are there employee resource groups, affinity groups, or business support groups, many different names for them, that the organization is looking to put in place or have in place already for equity seeking groups. And then you can see if that aligns with what you're looking for, if it's talking or if it's actually walking the walk, if they're actually putting effort into becoming more of an inclusive workspace that seeks diversity and equity for all.
Yes, to Agnes's point, actions speak louder than words. Agnes, do you want to follow up?
Oh, definitely. I have the same points as Raveen there. So really go and look for the sense of belonging for the employees and look for signs of things that you care about. I mean, sometimes you care about things that are different than other people, right? And you want alignment between what the corporate culture cares about and what you care about to find that alignment. So look for signs of those. But I am going to suggest here that we keep an open mind. I'll give you an example. So instead of being fixated about, how many women is there in the sales department, or, well, I would ask about maybe perhaps female in leadership positions, right? Because last week I had a really awesome conversation with this startup in Vancouver, and our whole topic, our whole thing the other day was about hiring. So he has a small sales team right now of 4 males, and we were just brainstorming about ideas of how to get more ladies into the sales team. And he was telling me, Agnes, and I was telling him about how rounding up the sales personalities, really getting more diversity into the group is better for just sales in general. And he's telling me, he's like, Agnes, just stop there. He's like, it's not that I don't want to hire sales ladies. Is Agnes, there's only 5% of the applicant in the pool for me to pick from in the first place, right? So I think I don't think women realize how good they're in sales, and women doesn't realize how good sales is for women. So for those who's looking for a job, make sure to ping me after the webinar. I have plenty of sales jobs to connect you guys to. So because everyone's looking for female sales, like every one of my clients looking to diversify. So it's just a matter of getting more applicants in the pool.
Thanks so much for saying that, Agnes.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, what a great opportunity for anybody, for any woman that wants to be part of the sales profession. That's a great opportunity. Thank you. Sorry, Lisa.
And you're right. We've invited, younger Gen Z. I've got daughters who are 23 and 25. So I'm getting to know lots of college and university grads, and I'm more than happy to invite them, and have done so, to our training so that they can at least be exposed. And actually it was one of those women who said, Lise, your images and your, you need to be more, expand on, because we were not being as diverse in even our images. I wasn't even aware of it. And I am not a person, I'm a person who welcomes diversity. So sometimes we don't even know it. But I think, again, what we need to do, and again, we're happy to, Agnes, you're happy to help people and women get into sales. We're happy to train and invite people to even attend or observe our sales training sessions. We've got open programs that are coming up, just to give them exposure, because I think that that is so important, so that they can see what are the viable options. Because again, as most of us have fallen into sales by accident, everyone will agree we all love it when we're there. Most days.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, it's that aspect of visibility and seeing women and females in sales, 100%. Thank you. This is actually our last discussion point. Disappointingly, because I feel like this discussion has been fantastic, but we are going to get to this last question. We have a few questions from our attendees as well. So our last question here is, a lack of self-confidence holds women back throughout their career journey. Even after women advance to sales leadership roles, this lack of self-confidence still plagues at 38%. In addition to external biases, internal ones also hold female sales professionals back. Have you ever encountered a lack of self-confidence or even a bout of imposter syndrome in any of your roles? Do you have any advice to give women who hope to overcome this? Lisa, can we start with you?
I think mindset is huge, right? It all begins, lots of conversations were around having that positive mindset, playing that victor as opposed to victim, dealing with the hand that you're dealt. And I think what we need to do, I mean, this is one of the biggest discussion items that we talk about in our training programs, is self-talk. I remember when I used to drive down the road going, is this customer going to want to see me? Will they buy from me? I had to learn how to re-engineer the voice in my head. And that's how I learned to become more prepared, do my research, create agendas, be more consultative. And those are all the kinds of things, because if you think you can, and you will. But I think it's a matter of that self-talk, positive mindset, and we really need to encourage and be cheerleaders and mentors around that.
If you think you can, you will. I love that. Agnes, anything from you?
I think this is my personal view. I think women are just very task oriented. Like, we're wired that way so that we can cross things off our to-do list. And I think for that personality type, it's really tough to deal with that constant rejection in sales. Rejection in sales just means, for me anyway, now that I'm accustomed to it, right? It just means that the prospect and I don't see common grounds, right? It hardly have anything to do with me personally. So once I learn to understand that, right, and not get emotional over a lost sale, then I start to understand that, you know what? I need to work with my closing ratio, right? I get rejected today means I'm paving the way to a close one tomorrow. So I'm letting it sort of roll off my back. And I keep thinking, well, is Joe going to lose sleep over that close loss? Nope. I'm not going to lose sleep over that close loss, and really start to understand the world and the mechanics of sales, so that you realize that it isn't, so that it doesn't take a dive to your self-confidence, because they have nothing to do with, like, it's not your ability. Like, it's very little has to do with your ability when you close loss or not. There's much more at play here. So just letting it roll off your back will certainly help with that, I think.
Thank you. Ravina or Lisa, anything to add?
Sure, I just would say, and I've dealt with self-confidence in my career, of course, it's, focus on what you can control. I mentioned that earlier. What is in your power of influence to change? So do your research. Make sure you know your stuff, what you're talking about. If you're selling, what products or services you're selling, make sure you're familiar with that. If you're coaching a house league team, make sure you're familiar with the rules of the game. Know your stuff, and then in your interaction, project confidence. Even if you're a ball of nerves inside, project confidence, because that's contagious. Then whoever you're interacting with, they're going to perceive your confidence because, one, you know your stuff, you know what you're talking about, and you're confident in the way you're presenting it. So those are two things that I would say focus on, and then your self-confidence will naturally build the more and more you do it.
And just to add to that, I think one of the things that I'm observing is that people don't like rejection. And certainly when we take a look at millennials and Gen Z, they have to deal with rejection. They want to be loved. Sales is a little bit different. So knowing what those closing ratios are, having that thick skin, it's harder to prospect than ever. And yet we see so many sales leaders hiring recent college or university grads and saying, hey, go make 50 phone calls, or send emails and try to be able to digital prospect digitally. It's the hardest part of sales, and they're putting those new salespeople into those roles. Even the most seasoned salespeople are challenged at being able to prospect. So again, I think we need to take a look at what that onboarding looks like, and how do we get them to feel confident and get some wins so they feel that success in sales.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you so much for this feedback and for addressing these very important stats from Forrester's recent study. I think we'll move on to our questions from the audience now. I'll have to apologize, it is 12 on the dot right now, but these are some really important questions to address. So I'll start with Lisa's here. Can you talk about how in our pandemic reality, where we may not be face-to-face, how women ensure their voice is heard, especially in traditionally male-dominated environments such as construction? What is working?
So, what a great question to ask me, Ripplin, because I'm in the midst of building a home. So I've had the opportunity to work with lots of contractors, lots of salespeople, and I have to admit, it's been a bit disappointing. They've become very, very transactional. There's supply issues. And this is where, no matter male or female, being strategic, proactive, what are you planning, talking to your customers to forecast what you can do. And I've posted many, many videos, just help me. I'm looking for great consultative salespeople to help me build my home. So there are lots of options to be able to do that. And I think we need to encourage more of those people, whether you're male or female. And we do lots of work in the building materials industry and train lots of different salespeople, but we got a long ways to go. And there is a place for a lot of great women to succeed in the construction and building materials industry.
Thank you, Raveen. Do you have anything to say on that?
Lisa really encapsulated it nicely. And I think we've mentioned it earlier on too in various ways, is communicating. Hopefully it's a safe and psychologically safe environment for you to be comfortable in expressing your opinions. But I'm such a big communicator. For me, is I would need to express that. I would need to talk it out and see how can we make difference. And for everyone around, how can we understanding all of our uniquenesses, what challenges we might be and barriers we might be facing, how can we use our privilege to support those that are at a disadvantage for one another to support.
Thanks, Ravina. Agnes, do you have anything to add? Perfect. Our next one here is a good one. So with key areas like increasing awareness, encouraging women to not censor themselves out, and providing support and encouragement, how can we attract more women in the field? Lisa, you touched on this briefly, but is there anything else that you can say?
Well, I think even Rublin being a part of this webinar, I think we need to be reaching out to all of our leaders in sales to say, hey, I think we need to be communicating that sales is a fabulous career, and doing more of that, and showing them how different sales is than the current stigma. It is a great job where, I mean, I'm so blessed that my clients have become great friends, right? And I've got partnerships that I've had for years. We've had bumps in the road, but we've worked together. And I value those relationships. And I've absolutely loved the flexibility, the ability to win and lose and work together. And I think it's an incredible career where you really do get to help other organizations become better at what they do and offer great solutions.
Thanks, Lisa. I think that Raveen, if I can, Raveen had brought up a really good point about increasing visibility on this. And I know here at the CPSA, we're really trying to amp up that sense of representation. And a lot of our marketing collateral, our social posts, for instance, who we have on our board as well as on our senior leadership team, we're really trying to amplify that voice, which I think is definitely a fantastic start. But Raveen and Agnes, is there anything else that you can suggest on how we can attract more women in sales?
Well, where are you posting for jobs? Is it the typical places where you're not yielding women into the candidate pool? Or are you going out into other job boards and stuff that are focusing on supporting women and their causes? So if you're an organization trying to recruit more, at the end of the day, you're not trying to pick a woman because they're a woman. You want to pick the right candidate who's going to be the most successful in the role. But the point is we want to have more women added to that pool of candidates to select from, which Agnes, when you were talking to your customer in Vancouver, they only had, I think, 5% of women that actually apply. So we want to entice more, we want to recruit more women into the candidate pool so you have more women to choose from. But it's, as an organization, where are you recruiting? Where are you posting jobs? Are you getting visible to where women are looking for employment and such? So visibility is a key one.
Mm-hmm. Rupalin, when I talk to different college and university professors about this, what they've said is it's one thing to educate the current college and university students, but what they're saying is it's more important to actually educate their parents, because their parents are the ones who are wanting them to be in aspirational careers. They're the ones who chose that sales may not have been right for them or not a viable career. So I think I need to really, and I think we all need to look at how do we create better awareness in the different generations, the baby boomers, I'm Gen X, right? How do we create awareness in those generations in order to be able to help them encourage others to get into sales?
Thank you, Lisa. Agnes, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think, I mean, definitely, I think this webinar is a good start. I think just getting CPSA really shining a light on this area is important. One thing that we've been doing, like I mentioned, over the course of the last, few years, 10 years, actually at it, we've been talking to fourth-year university students as well, just not just for female, bringing female, but just opening up the world of sales to more people in general, and for people to understand the world of sales isn't, used car salesman, right? Although used car salesman is a fine career, but the adage. So it's important for just us to amplify the message that sales is a good career. It is a very viable career. It's a very successful career for people that fits into the skill sets, right?
Thank you so much.
As you said earlier, the needle has moved so little in the 30 years that I've been in sales.
Yeah.
And I'm really going to encourage many of my clients, our counterparts. I think today's webinar has been absolutely fantastic, but we need to really move that needle. And I think collectively we need to look at how do we put our arms together, welcome more women into sales, and look at how we can break the bias.
Thank you, Lisa. And what a great way to end our webinar. Just as you mentioned, 3% is not enough. We need that number to grow. We need that number to grow every year, and we need to see that. On behalf of the Canadian Professional Sales Association, I really do want to thank each one of you for joining us today. Agnes, Raveen, and Lisa, thank you so much for your fantastic feedback. For everybody who's joined this call, it has been recorded, and I will send the link out to all of you shortly. I think that if anything, having this webinar as a resource to even go back to and kind of listen to as a means to motivate and encourage you on a day-to-day basis is a fantastic resource in and of itself. So thank you so much to everybody. Have a fantastic day and a fantastic International Women's Day. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.